So today we're going to be looking at Arctic Fox in the color Frose. So I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12. That's not synonymous with hair levels, if it's not obvious. 1, I have like a green. 2 is like a grayish blue. 3 is a natural red. 4 is black. And then from 4 up to 11, we have a range that goes up to platinum blonde. And then number 12 is like the toned version of number 11. So what I will be doing is I will be taking the dye directly from the container and I'll put it at the top of each swatch. And then on the ends, I will be diluting the dye. And I will let you know the measurement for that as we go. Also, really quick, I do just want to say I cannot guarantee that how this dye turns out on my swatches is how it's going to turn out on your hair. Everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take dye differently. So I always recommend doing as much research as possible, especially when you are dyeing your hair yourself. And then for the ends where I'm diluting it, I'm doing 1/4 of a teaspoon of the dye with a teaspoon of diluter. I do get some questions about why I dilute the dyes. So firstly, people like to be creative, and sometimes that involves diluting dyes because when you dilute a dye, essentially all you're doing is lightening it up. So if you have a dark dye, maybe like a red, and you want a pink, instead of buying a pink, you can probably dilute that red to make it a pink. And then for me as well, with many dyes, I do think diluting is kind of important to show because it can show how it might fade over time, or it can even show undertones in the dye as well. And in all of my videos so far, I've only ever used a white conditioner to dilute. But long story short, no, you don't have to dilute a dye. Semi-permanent dyes like this one, you just can use right out of the bottle if you like it that way. I'm gonna let these sit for maybe like 3 hours. I will rinse them out, and then when they are dry, I will meet you back here. Even though this is a pastel dye, I think it dyed more than I expected it to, which is good. I'm not really sure if this has been marketed as a rose gold, but I feel like on the darker blonde swatches, like number 8 and 9, but more number 8, it kind of gives that kind of like rose gold look. So on number 7, I can kind of see a difference there. But I think if your hair is like number 7's, it would depend on how well your hair takes dye. On some people, it might not show up. And then 5 and 6, I don't think I see a difference. I would be surprised if number 5 had anything. Number 1 didn't really do a ton on the top, which makes sense. Green and pink are technically opposites. Number 2, it did dye and it made it kind of, I don't know, it's not quite lavender. The pink is much more muted. And number 3, on the top, it still looks relatively natural, but you can see a little hair of pink. So hopefully we can see when I do the comparisons, the slight difference between the two. Otherwise, on the lightest blonde, it to me looks kind of like a baby pink. I wouldn't say it's too cool toned, but I also wouldn't say it's too warm toned either, kind of in the middle. Since this is an Arctic Fox dye, I'd like to start with Arctic Fox first for comparisons. The first comparison I'd like to do is Electric Paradise. So this is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, number 9, and number 8. Electric Paradise is obviously meant to be a more neon dye, and it does seem to be a little bit more pigmented as well. along with being a little bit more warm tone too. I know my bottle, when I open it, it kind of looks orange, at least in the lighting that I'm in. But when I go into natural lighting, it turns more pink. So it does have a tad bit of orange in it versus Frose. And now comparing 8 and 6, I feel like you still get a kind of rose gold color with Electric Paradise, but it does look brighter. So I guess it'd be like a neon version of rose gold. And it makes number 8 look like there's less pigment, but you can see a difference. It's subtle, but it's there. And this is comparable to number 3. Oddly enough, I don't really see a big difference between the two. The Electric Paradise one is maybe a hair more bright looking, whereas number 3 for Frose looks a little bit more natural. But if they were two people standing like not right next to each other in the same room, but you know, some distance, you'd think they're pretty much the same color. And the other comparison I'd like to do for Arctic Fox is Virgin Pink. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, and number 10. I mostly wanted to compare the diluted sections for Virgin Pink because obviously the direct dye is not going to be similar. But it looks like Virgin Pink is much more cool toned. Like very cool toned compared to Frose. I have done a dye actually called Rose Gold, and that is from Iroiro. So I'd like to compare that next. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, number 9, and number 8. So these are both pastel dyes, but I hope it's pretty obvious on camera. The rose gold one is much more warm toned, and I don't even really see much of a difference on the rose gold number 8. I feel like the ones that look more rose gold is 10 and 11. Whereas for the Frose, I feel like number 8, maybe 9, but from my perspective, 9 looks more pinky. But to me, number 8 pulls a little bit more rose gold. And then this is comparable to number 3. Once again, there's not a huge difference between the two. They both look relatively natural. I don't know if it's just my eyes, but I do feel like I see a tad bit more pink in the Frose swatch, but that could just be my eyes, I don't know. And then the last comparison I'd like to do is, I'm thinking, going to be the most similar, and that is Ion in the color Flamingo. So this is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9, number 8, and number 3. I don't know if it can pick up on my camera because sometimes my camera struggles to pick up minute differences, but to me the Flamingo is just a bit more cool toned, and Frose has a hair bit more of warmth to it. I don't remember the ratios I did for diluting Flamingo, but this is when I used to do 2 different ratios, and I think for Frose I did too much diluter, honestly. So in my opinion, I do think Frose is a little bit more pigmented because it does pick up on 10, 9, and even 8 a little bit better than Flamingo does. But that could be partially because of the undertone differences. I've noticed that a little bit warmer tones tend to hold better when initially dyeing. And on number 3, like before, you really do not see much of a difference on the two. Pretty much looks the same. Alright, so now that we've done our comparisons, we should get into the close-ups. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below for a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only like to do dyes that are not tested on animals. I hope this video helped. Thank you so very much for watching, and thank you to my patrons, and I hope to see you in the next video.